This event is with Iranian human rights lawyers, and we have today speaking with us Dehghan, who until recently was inside Iran working on high-profile human rights cases within the Iranian court system. And he's represented individuals in high-profile cases, including dual nationals that have been held as hostages by the state. He holds active memberships in both the Iranian Bar Association and the International Bar Association. And he's really not only a human rights lawyer, he's an educator and an author. Saeed, I'm going to ask you to please unmute yourself and turn on your video, and I'm going to hand the floor to you. Thank you.
I would like to thank my distinguished co-panelists and all of you here for joining us today at this important and critical time for Iran. To understand why human rights lawyers in Iran are constantly facing obstacles and even being prosecuted themselves by the Islamic Republic's judiciary, we should ask who are their clients and who are they trying to defend. The defendants are Iranian dissident, young people and women in particular, and opponents of the regime in general. The key issue here is also the fact that the Islamic Republic's judiciary has put in place a system that allows only lawyers who are pre-approved by the judiciary to represent such cases of dissident. It has imposed its will on the society within a law known as the Amendment to Article 48 of the Criminal Procedures. This is similar to other repressive measures imposed on the society, such as hijab and other laws violating basic freedoms that interfere in the private lives of citizens. In order to expand and analyze this problem, I would like to open by looking at a tangible and familiar case that ignited the woman life freedom movement in Iran last year. Let's start by stating the problem. 1. A young woman named Mehsا Amini travels from her hometown of Saqqez to Tehran to visit relatives during her summer vacation. Although she is observing the hijab and wearing headscarf, but because not all of her hair is covered, she is detained by the so-called morality police. She loses her life because of the circumstances of her detention and how she is treated during the few hours in custody. 2. Iranian citizens, especially women and young people, come to protest in solidarity and gather in front of the Kasra hospital in Tehran, where Mehsا loses her life. These protesting citizens are themselves arrested. 3. 2 journalists, Nilufar Hamidi and Elahe Mohammadi, who covered these events and publish reports about it, they themselves are arrested and subsequently charged with national security crimes such as cooperation with enemy government and are still being held in prison as of today. 4. A group of medical doctors in Iran, after reviewing the available medical records and reports, reached the conclusion that the cause of Mehsa's death is multiple blows to the head, and her death was not natural death. These medical doctors also get persecuted under national security crimes and charged with propaganda against the state. 5. A group of human rights lawyers who are persecuting the cases of detainees, including detained protesters, journalists who reported on it, and doctors who investigated it, they themselves, the lawyers who want to provide legal representation to detainees, they are also detained. 6. Eventually, lawyers and colleagues who act to represent the detained human rights lawyer, they are also detained. Now, let's analyze the problem. 1. Let's assume that the Islamic Republic has the right to institute laws under the guise of religion or national security that violate the citizens' civil rights. Of course, Article 9 of the Constitution forbids the passing of such laws, but let's say they can act as such. For example, in case of hijab violation, unacceptable article of laws provides for a punishment of maximum 2 months. This law is amended to provide for conversion of the prison sentence to financial fine. Therefore, further detention, torture during detention, and other ill treatments of those persecuted under this law should be illegal. 2. Also, let's make note of the following. A. According to existing laws, Iranian citizens have the right to peacefully protest. This right is enshrined in Article 27 of the Constitution. B. The mandate and professional role of journalists is to investigate, gather, and publish news. C. Medical doctors, according to their professional oath, must be concerned about public health and safety. Considering all of the above, therefore none have broken any laws, and their arrest and persecutions itself is illegal. 3. Let's even assume that arrest and detention of those citizens who oppose the Islamic Republic is a legal act. Yet, according to Article 35 of the Constitution, these detainees must have access to a lawyer of their choosing in all stages of interrogation and persecution. Also, Article 38 of the Constitution states that any torture for obtaining coerced confessions is illegal and should be prosecuted. As a footnote, note that Article 48 of the Criminal Procedures denying access to a lawyer of one's choosing for dissidents is in direct contradiction to Article 35 of the Constitution I just mentioned. 4. And let's make the impossible assumption that dissidents and political opponents can be prosecuted under the Islamic Republic's law. But according to these same laws, they should be prosecuted in a public court and in a presence of a jury. That is according to Article 168 of the Constitution. Yet they are prosecuted behind closed doors in revolutionary courts with no access to legal counsel and without a jury. 5. Given these circumstances, and even assuming the revolutionary court to have a legal standing to prosecute dissidents, which they absolutely do not, yet according to Article 450 of the Criminal Procedure Code, lawyers who challenge the lower court's decision must be able to attend appeals court hearing and explain their objections. None of this happened because the head of the judiciary writes a bureaucratic letter to the supreme leader and obtains his permission to violate this law, not to hold public hearings and literally transform the appeals court hearing to a rubber stamping hearing. 6. When the cases of dissidents and political prisoners reach its final stage in the Supreme Court, what happens is a rush to confirm unfair and unlawful sentences, such as execution. These sentences are carried out in a rush and without allowing defense lawyers to appeal them under the timetable written into the law. There are many such cases. Just during the Women Life Freedom Movement, the execution of several young protesters, young people, Majid Reza Rahnavard, Muhammad Hosseini, Mehdi Karami, as well the cases of those sentenced to execution in Isfahan followed this illegal and rushed pattern in confirming and carrying out this inhumane punishment, which is irreversible. And now the judicial and legal system in Iran has collapsed, and there is no observance of even the existing laws in practice and the courtrooms. This I have called judicial collapse, or in the Farsi, furupashi huquqi. 2. Accountability and seeking justice is not possible in such a totalitarian political system, even as Article 34 of the Constitution states that seeking justice and redress is the fundamental right of every Iranian citizen. But we see the families of those killed, families seeking justice for loss of their loved ones. They themselves are detained, prosecuted, and punished. And finally, here are some recommendations. Given the current circumstance where seeking justice under the Islamic Republic is impossible, perhaps the only venue for seeking justice and accountability is in the international arena. Therefore, my recommendations to you is: 1, hear their voice, be their voice, and raise their voice in international forums. 2, collect and submit the evidence of crimes committed to the UN fact-finding mission. 3, pursue the perpetrators of these crimes under the universal jurisdiction principle. 4, we should all work and develop transitional justice mechanisms. 5, we should advocate for and lay the grounds for a future Iran joining the International Criminal Court, ICC. 6, and last but not least, Iranian activists and organizations should work on a roadmap to democracy. I myself engaged in several such initiatives, such as the Gozar network that was launched in Stanford University a few months ago, as well as on behalf of my legal entity, Parsi Law, where we are developing these documents with cooperation of a group of Iranian lawyers inside the country. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Said. Given that not only are citizens arrested and imprisoned for speaking out, but so are their lawyers, and given the challenges that you faced while you were working as an independent lawyer inside Iran, why do you and your colleagues continue to try to provide due process and advance these rights, even though, as you said, in the judicial system, it seems almost impossible?
The short answer to your question is because we lawyers, alongside the general public, do not have any other option but to resist and struggle. Taking on human rights cases in Iran is like walking in a minefield without a map. As in The Stream and the Stone, a Persian story that's taught to school children, lawyers must learn how to find their way between rocks and stones. Yet every year there is less water in the stream and the rocks are bigger and sharper. This is a point I made in an article that the campaign published 3 years ago. I'm still of the same opinion, and as such, we are of the people and for the people, and therefore stand next to them and activists in their struggles.
Thank you, Said.